Hi, my name's Rowan.
Hi, my name is Alyssa.
And this is our podcast.
Welcome to the party.
Potty.
Party people.
All right.
Hola. It's officially 2025 now.
Not in this moment, but
In this moment that this is on the internet.
it is officially 2025. If you listened to our last episode, you will know that we are leaving some things behind in 2024. And one of our goals
That feels like fair.
is to figure out Jesus. More so where we stand with the church, I think.
Yeah, I don't think it's figuring out Jesus.
I feel like we know him.
I feel like it's figuring out religion again.
Yeah, that's fair. It's funny because, it's a tricky one. Where do you feel like you stand with it right now?
I don't know. Okay, let's rewind. I think that the best way to do this is to start at the beginning. To actually, hold on. Let's fast forward. Our goal here...
Let's start at the beginning, but actually, just kidding.
Shut up.
Continue.
Okay, so here's my thought process. What we're going to do here is that we have actually, since the inception of... Fix your face, bro.
I'm listening.
Since the inception of What We're Not Taking to Our Graves, right? The concept of religious trauma. Because this is a very big part of who we are, unfortunately. Religious deconstruction. This is a very big, I would say, pillar of ourselves.
I agree.
We always knew that this was going to be something that we talked about. We just didn't know how we were going to talk about it.
It's a nuanced subject for us. There's so many layers to it.
And I think that we both knew that we didn't want to be a religious podcast. We didn't want to be two girls in a Bible. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And we grew up in an area, we still live in an area where it's very saturated with good old Southern Baptists. I mean, there's more than just that now, but Utah have the Mormons, we have the good old Southern Baptists. And so, I don't know, I just feel like bringing this to light and talking about this and for me, I feel like this is more vulnerable than talking about the fact that I enjoy butt stuff on the internet.
Oh my gosh, really?
This for me is a little more oh my gosh, what is so-and-so gonna say? You know what I mean?
Yeah. You also grew up in a church that was, I wouldn't say involved in everybody's business, but they seemed to know kind of what was going on with everybody, right?
Oh yeah. And I still go to the church that I grew up in. And so I feel like that is part of why maybe this is a little more intimidating to bring to light. So this is something that we've talked about. We've gone back and forth every week when we sit down. We're like, oh, is this the week where we finally hash it out? And every week we're like, no.
Well, and I think it's hard because some of our previous episodes we've touched on it, and every time we come back to this subject, we're like, well, we kind of touched on this last episode. I don't want to we don't want to come across, I don't know if overbearing is the right word, but just we're overloading with religious trauma stuff. It is a big part of what shaped us, and so I think that's why we sprinkle a little bit of it in, because it kind of the roots are there. They're in everything and how we've moved forward through our lives.
Yes. So that's the fast forward. That's the big picture. So what we want to
rewind.
So what we want to do is one of our big goals this year, and it's really kind of, I think, pushed because of the fact that our children are getting older. Like we mentioned in the last episode, we're really kind of sensing the need for that community that we had when we were children, that the church really did serve, and we want our children to grow up having that community and that camaraderie, and we want them to have that sense of belonging and family that we had growing up in the church. And so we have kind of felt pressured, maybe is the right word, pushed, led. We felt called.
I like that one. That felt right.
We felt called to kind of face our shit and figure it out.
Yeah. So, I don't know. Do you want to talk about the actual roots of the trauma, or do you want to just talk about where we're at now and maybe do the trauma later?
I feel like we have to start with the roots. So that's what we're going to do today.
I was really hoping you weren't going to say that. I was like, yeah, let's
I know. I feel like we have to. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to start with the roots. We're just going to kind of give you guys some backstory, because I feel like it's going to resonate with a lot of people. Maybe not everyone everywhere, but we do have a lot of people who listen who grew up here. We're small still. Most of the people who are listening are friends and family. So they're going to, odds are they probably experienced a lot of the same things we did. And so, and then as the year goes by and as we're figuring this shit out, I think we're going to come back and touch on it every so often and just kind of open up the conversation as we're, figuring stuff out and as new questions pop up, and just kind of opening up the conversation with you guys and deconstructing these things and finding answers to the things that we've been asking ourselves for years, and I don't know, just going on this little journey together.
Yeah. All right. Well, who's starting? Well, I kind of asked you the question first. So I feel like it's only fair.
It's only fair that I begin.
Yeah.
I have always been involved in some sort of church. Like, my earliest childhood memories were I did like a preschool program in a church, I want to say Lutheran church. And so we did like Wednesday morning chapel and like all the things, like very, very much inundated in church from a very, very young age. And we weren't a family who necessarily stuck to one denomination. And that's kind of the overarching theme of, I think, my religious experience. And I think that that's kind of why I struggle so much with religion. We've talked about this a lot, how like you struggle with the emotions and I struggle with like the logic. Mm-hmm. And I think that this is kind of the root of it, because I not only didn't stick to like a certain denomination, but I also was exposed to so many religions.
So many religions or branches of Christianity?
Just both.
Well, is it your dad that is like your biological father? Isn't he of different religion?
My biological father, I believe, Muslim now?
I was thinking he might be Islam or like some branch of it, but I couldn't remember. I believe he is
now. So when I was super, super young, I did a Lutheran, I believe it was Lutheran preschool.
Trinity Lutheran by chance?
No, it wasn't. It wasn't here.
Oh, lame. Never mind.
And then when I got a little bit older, we went to a very, very strict Baptist church, and that was my home church for a very long time. And that was the church that like my mom wore a skirt where you could like see her ankles, and they were like, slut. And my parents really did kind of stick to the Baptist ordeal. That was kind of like what they resonated with the most. Grandparents were Lutheran. My great-grandparents were Pentecostal. My grandparents' best friends were Messianic Jews. And so I got to see a lot, like I went with them to a lot of their services. I went on a mission trip to Israel with them for a month. My best friend, her mom was a Catholic, and then her father was Muslim. And so I got to go see a lot of their services. So I was just exposed to a lot of different religions. I had an aunt who was Mormon, and then later on in life, one of my best friends was Mormon. I would when I was a teenager, one of my best friends and I would very often just go pop in to different services. So we would go to Jewish services. We went to a couple Buddhist services, Hindu services. Like, I just loved seeing other religions like worship. Like, I just loved it. I thought it was so beautiful. And like, since at such a young age, I was seeing so many people worship their God. And I was just taught, like, they're worshiping their God. That's beautiful. It's a beautiful thing. You know, we accept that. My best friend worshiped Allah, and you know what I mean? Like, it was so fine to me, and it was taught to be accepted, that when I was a teenager, I had a youth pastor who was very much not of that belief and did everything in her power to try to convince me that that was wrong. And at the time, my boyfriend in high school was Jewish. And he and I were, we were in love. We were 16 years old. We were living life. And we both had a love for religion. Like, just in a very, like, logical, break it down. I love to treat the Bible like it's a textbook. And I hate fluff. Like, I don't want to go to a Sunday school class and learn how to be a Proverbs 31 woman. There is nothing I hate more. Like, I don't want to do it. And she tried everything in her power to break that up, like break that in me. And it was really hard because up until that point, all of my teachers and all of the grown-ups in my life had built that in me.
You're raised in a more open-minded way of thinking, and she, not a rude way, but hers was one way. It was closed-minded. It was, this is it. And so do you feel like, what do you feel like how did you fare in those moments with her?
I was so confused because this was someone who was supposed to be like, you know, the authority in the situation. She was like in the chain of command, like the one above me.
And you trusted her to some extent,
yeah,
right?
I trusted her. And she very much did everything in her power to strip this like power almost out of me, because, you know, they say knowledge is power, right? And so it very much was like she wanted to take away this knowledge that I was getting from reading the Bible like a man. And it was really hard and confusing. And, you know, I had all of these teachers and grown-ups in my life who up until that point encouraged me to learn about other religions and encouraged me to go experience them firsthand. Because even, you know, they say, even if, you know, that's not your religion, it's still good to know about them, and it's still good to respect them and to treat these people kindly. And she was basically like, absolutely not. You should not be anywhere near that. Like, and it was really confusing because I was 16 years old.
Yeah. And I'm sure, I mean, you can tell me if I'm wrong. There's a good chance she was just trying to do what she thought was right by you, because you're a young mind that's susceptible. And so she was probably thinking, you shouldn't be exposed to these things because you need to be working on your foundation with your religion more so than exploring others. When you're an adult, you have more of that capacity probably, and so she wouldn't discourage it then, maybe. Yeah. I mean, I don't know this woman. I have no idea. I'm just thinking out loud, I guess, that she probably thought what she was doing was right, but it's very conflicting.
Yes. And so
doesn't make it okay.
It's also important to note that my church has 2 campuses. The main campus that I went to as a kid was the smaller campus, and so that's where all of this occurred. That was the first time in like my experience in religion where I was kind of told to sit down, and that like I wasn't allowed to want to learn, and that I should just be content with kind of like the fluff, right? The type of lessons where we sit down and maybe we read one verse and then we talk about resisting temptation. And that's where I kind of like, I started to lose interest in church, and it was boring, and my mind was not stimulated. And as we have discussed so many times, that if my mind is not stimulated in something, I don't want to be there. And so I was having a lot of conflicting emotions, and I would try to bring it up to her, and she was like, this is what I was afraid of. Like, this is exactly what I tried to warn you against. Like, open yourself up to all these things and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh my God, I fucked up. Like, man, you were right. And so then, you know, as the years have gone by, I left for Washington for a while. I didn't go to church while I was in Washington, but I did work for a church. I worked in a preschool that was part of a church. And when I came home, I started going back to church. But I was in that really weird limbo stage where, like, there's no Sunday school class for you because you just graduated high school, but you're not married. And you know what I mean? Like that weird in-between stage. And when Dylan and I started dating, he started coming to church with us, obviously. And we moved in together really, really soon. And we both were volunteering in the youth group because at the time I still had 3 sisters that were in the youth group. And so we were doing like, our first date actually was D-Now. And he came and volunteered. At the time, he owned a landscaping company. So he like brought a trailer full of dirt, and we were like, you know, helping like a bunch of people renovate their lawns after one of the big storms that just came by. And like, he spent the entire day just helping at the church. Like, it was really awesome. And I was really excited. And I was like, this is cool that you're willing to be plugged in with this thing that I really care about. And like, great. And once we moved in together, this is a new youth pastor, and the youth pastors that took over were actually a married couple that I had grown up with. They were just a couple years older than I was, and I had thought of us as friends because we had done choir together. We had done like all the church plays and Christmas pageants and all that kind of stuff together. So I had thought of us as friends. And when they found out that Dylan and I had moved in together, they sat us down and said, you guys aren't allowed to be involved in the youth group at all. You're a terrible influence on these children. I can't believe that you have been volunteering in the youth group. I think at that point it had been like a month that we'd lived together and we were still helping out. They were like, I can't believe that you have been volunteering in the youth group and didn't tell us that you had moved in together and that you're living in sin. And you made us look so bad in front of the congregation. And I was like, my siblings make up half the youth group. And the other half are like my siblings' best friends. Like everybody in this youth group knew what was happening. They all came to my housewarming party. But okay. And so I was like, okay, you're entitled to do what you feel is best for your youth group, but whatever. That's cool. And so then we were like, well, what are we going to do? Like, there's nowhere for us to go. Like, just pop in for Sunday service for 45 minutes and then leave. Like, it just felt weird. And so I went to the pastor and I was like, hey, like, can we start a Sunday school class? Like, there's a couple other kids that were about our age. Like, could we start a Sunday school class? Like, I would be willing to teach it. Like, I could do that. That sounds fun to me. Like, I have, I think, a good amount of knowledge. Like, I would be willing to do it. And he was like, no, you're not married. And I was like, what? I could teach a Sunday school class. I've been volunteering and being in a leadership position in the youth group for the last 6 years. I've been doing VBS. I've been doing camps. I've been doing D-Nows. Like, I have the leadership experience to do a Sunday school class for 5 other people in their early 20s. Like, I can do this. And he was like, no, you're not married. Come back to me when you're married and we could talk about it.
Did he need the husband's authority for you to be able to teach? Is that what the vibe was?
That was the vibe.
Okay, I would just make sure I wasn't misunderstanding if it was more like you're living in sin, so you're not like holy enough to teach, or if it was like you need your husband's authority.
No, because Dylan would have been the one leading the class.
Okay.
And so then Dylan and I stopped going to church.
Did he have the same feelings as you at the time?
Yeah. Because let me tell you something. Dylan didn't want to teach no fucking class. Dylan didn't want to teach no class.
He was there for vibes.
He was there for the vibes. I mean, don't get me wrong. I think that Dylan did enjoy going to church. But that man is an introvert. He didn't want to teach no class.
Yeah.
And so we stopped going to church. And there's a couple times where I did try to get back in. I took a really good class in, what was that, 21 at the crossing?
Mm-hmm. I went with you to the women's thing there.
And it was a really good class. But I just can't. I feel like where I'm at now is that I can't stand being treated like a dumbass in church because I'm not a dumbass. Like, it frustrates me to no level. I feel like I'm wasting time if I go sit in a Sunday school class and someone tells me that I should be a Proverbs 31 woman. Like, fuck off. I can listen to a KSBJ commercial if I want to learn how to be a Proverbs 31 woman. That's not what I want to do. I want to learn something. I want to walk away learning something.
Kind of reminds me about how people talk about, like, I wish I would have learned real life skills in school, like taxes and shit. It's like you want to learn. You want to go in there and actually learn what you need, tools you need to go through daily life. And I don't know enough about Proverbs 31 woman. I can't really speak to it, but I'm just saying that I don't think that was necessarily something that you were going to resonate with at that time.
Yes. And like, I'm using that as an example just because it's like you can walk into any church on any given Sunday and I promise one of the classes drops that. But like, I feel like my current biggest frustration is don't want to walk into a class and be told to sit down because I'm an unmarried woman in my mid-20s.
Yeah.
I want to go in there and open my Bible and read it and dissect it and break down the words. And I want to be treated as someone who has the educational capability as the 50-year-old man sitting across from me.
When you went to all these different denominations of Christianity, did any of them resonate with you more, or was there any key differences that you noticed?
I think that the classes that I learned the most from, like the ones that actually were to like dig into the Bible and crack it open and like read it like a textbook and actually get to the like behind the actual meaning and not just, oh, I'm going to pick a verse and then create a sermon off the verse, was actually the Messianic Jews.
Interesting.
This is just as someone who, again, like dabbled in a shit ton of religions in my youth. It's because I feel like all of their ancestors don't believe in Jesus. And so they have to like, or they wanted to like really prove. And so they had to like pull the meat out of it.
So that form...
Messianic Jews believe in Jesus.
Okay, I didn't know.
Yeah.
I couldn't remember because I'm not well versed in all the religions. I took one class in high school, I believe, and I've done some light dabbling research of my own, but obviously I know there's different branches of any religion, and like obviously there's orthodox versions of any religion. Like, you know, it can be, there's just a few different labels and I couldn't remember.
Yeah, the Messianic Jews believe in Jesus.
Interesting.
But yeah. I mean, I love it. Like, I
think I could get behind. I don't know. I'd have to look into it more, but I think I could get behind.
I have a Jewish Bible. I have an Orthodox study Bible. Like, I have the Bibles. Like, I love to just sit and dissect it. Like, it's so interesting. There's so much in there. Like, so many people have never even sat and opened up most of the books in the Bible. Because year after year, you're going to Sunday school class and you're reading the same passages. You're doing the same lessons and you don't even realize it. There's so much in there that you haven't even read. There's so much in there you haven't even looked at. And I don't want to do that. I don't want to, I don't know. That's where I'm at. I don't want to do fluff. I'm bored with fluff.
And do you feel like that's like pretty much like where you've stayed at? Because like, you know, like that was early young adulthood. Like you've stayed there, or do you feel like you've gone, or like has it ebbed and flowed over the last few years, you know, leading up to where you're at now, where we're kind of exploring back into it?
I feel like my belief has never swayed. I feel like there have been moments, of course, we all have moments where I'm like, if you're real, you're being a dick.
Sorry, continue.
But I think we all have moments like that.
Maybe
whether or not we're all brave enough to admit it.
We all have those moments. I mean, I've heard even from just people on different platforms, you know, talking about how angry they were at God. You know, I do think it's healthy to talk about, and I think it's getting more common to talk about that kind of stuff. But at the same time, it can still be taken as fluff. It depends on who is speaking on it. Stuff. I don't know. It's becoming more common.
I just don't know. I guess what my biggest concern is that will I be able to find a place in church that's not fluff? Or am I just going to have to suck it up?
I don't know.
Like, am I going to find somewhere in the church where I fit in, where I'm actually learning and my brain is stimulated and I feel like I'm walking away every Sunday mentally satiated? Or am I just going to have to like suck it up and praise the Lord?
I think there's a chance it's the second one, but I also think that's why people start their own small groups in churches and things like that, because I mean, I think there are a lot of people out there that just think they know best and they want to go and do it on their own, but I think there's a lot of people out there like you that have some feeling, whether it's conflicting or something they don't agree with or something they've read in the Bible and interpreted it a different way, and I think that they go out and they start to dissect it on their own, and sometimes it's in Bible study settings and sometimes they go on and actually start a church. Like, I think that that's a part of growth for some people. If that's the way your brain works, I don't think there's anything wrong with that, but I don't know that sucking it up will actually satisfy you either. I don't know what the actual answer is, but if I'm thinking it out loud, I want to believe there is a church that will fit all your criteria. You may have to make the criteria on your own, you know? Like, doesn't mean go start a church, but it may mean start small and have a Bible study that has like-minded people in it.
Yeah.
Because I think there are people that think like you. And there's probably people that enjoy the fluff, but also want to still delve deeper.
All right, your turn.
So it is funny because I knew we had differences in our upbringings when it came to how we were raised in church. But if you look at our upbringings in a general sense, like we were both raised in church, like you can definitely blanket statement it. And I use that term a lot. I wish there was a better way to explain it, but like you can definitely just like level it out and be like, yeah, we were both raised in church.
Yeah.
Done. But I was raised in a different way. And so to start off, I definitely went to church my whole life. We were always non-denominational Christian. My mom was very passionate about raising us in church. And I really applaud her for that, because one of the hardest things is that my dad refused to go. And that was really hard on her. And I think it would be hard on any family. I mean, like if you look at a family dynamic, whether it's the mom or the dad, if one of them is wanting to go and take their kids to church and the other one doesn't want to go, it's always going to feel a little isolating. So I applaud her for doing it anyway. She took us anyway. That was a big thing she did. But yeah, so growing up, that was kind of the model, was that it was mom and then sisters. We went to church. We actually had a church that we were at for quite a bit of time in the Woodlands, and like we were with them when they started teaching in like the Woodlands High School before they got their own property and things like that. Cool. So it was, and when they were at the high school, it was a really great church. When they ended up getting their own building, things kind of took a little bit of a turn. It felt like the stress of life and actually needing to manage and pay for this property and, you know, keep the roof over the congregation's head got to them, because it felt like they were becoming a little contrived. And instead of it being like trying to get us to be cheerful givers, for example, it was like they were pressuring people to help pay for this, you know. And on one hand, yes, you want to pay for your church, but also it's just like it was skewing the message of everything. They started to really cherry pick the lessons they were teaching in church. Like they would be, like you're saying, talking like one verse about temptation, then they'd go to like the other end of the Bible and find something that fit the narrative, and then they go back to the other side, and then like they were just cherry picking verses to make a whole message. And if you looked at those verses deeper, which my sister and I did a couple times, it would showcase like that's not what they were talking about at all.
Yeah.
And so it got a little confusing. And so I think whenever like my parents divorced, we kind of stopped going to church. Like it was just a hard time for all of us. You know, my older sisters had moved out. They had found churches of their own. I was the only kid at home. And so we just really weren't going to church, you know, but I was there I was raised in it for, you know, most of my elementary, middle school, high school. Like I was involved in the youth group and I was doing the productions, VBS, all, you know, everything. And it was just like, you know, like the only way I can describe it is how you know, like they want you to describe it. It's like, I was just like a kid on fire for God. Like I was in it. There was no doubt in my mind whatsoever. And I was happy. Like I remember being 16 and going to the camp in Florida. I don't remember what it's called, but I know a lot of churches would go to that same camp for beach week. And so we went and did a beach week, and I remember just hearing God or feeling him like so clearly, you know what I mean? And like that was the first time I'd experienced it, and it was like I had believed everything was real, and I was still like following the footsteps and like putting in the work, but like that was the first time like I reaped the reward, so to speak. Like I really felt God in that moment, and that was so cool. And it is something like I think that has held me together through the things I've been through now with the church and religion, because I think if it wasn't for those moments, like those key moments in my youth, I don't know that I would like still believe in God, honestly.
Yeah.
Because that has been a foundation for me. It's like, even on my darkest days, it's like held me together. So it really was just something like I was always going to follow in the footsteps that you're supposed to, that are laid out for you in church. I was going to be the girl that waited for marriage. I was going to have a husband that was a leader in the church. Like we were going to serve, we were going to be praying together, we were going to be a godly couple. Like that was like my dream. And when I graduated high school, right after my parents' divorce, like things were a little murky. You know, I went through a little bit of that stage I talked about, where I was just kind of rebelling a little bit, but even that wasn't that extreme. It's just, you know, I just need a minute to get some of it out. And so then, you know, I came back around, and it was around the summer, or in the summer, when I met Preston's dad and we started dating, that I just didn't know what I wanted to do. And like I said, I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. So I had looked into going to Bible college because my best friend at the time was going. And I was just like, let me look into this. And I felt called to go. I do think maybe there's a chance God wanted me to go there. But really what I think it was is I was scared and I was running away, because I don't think I really knew what I was doing. And it felt really overwhelming. And honestly, at that point in my life, I was really wanting to be the kid that could go to college, but I wasn't. I just couldn't do it. And so I ran away. But what I ran away to is not the greatest thing. In my time at Bible college, I don't know if you relate to this. Probably not, because you actually just said that you had someone trying to tell you something. You're like, no, wait, what? I trusted church leaders and authority wholeheartedly, because up to that point, nothing had really led me astray. Like I was very much drinking the Kool-Aid. And I don't mean that to be rude or negative. Like I trusted church leaders. I almost like had this like unwavering faith, like they were 100% anointed for a reason to be in this position. It was just, I don't know.
I think that The only reason I was skeptical was because I didn't trust any adults. Like, you know what I mean? Like, in my life, there were very few adults that I knew I could trust.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And so I think that was the only reason why I didn't just, like, jump in headfirst believing grown-ups.
No, that makes total sense. And I'm not trying to negate anybody. Like, I'm really not trying to, like, negate my own past experiences. I feel like this unwavering faith is kind of what led me to some of the stuff I went through, because there's nothing inherently wrong with trusting church leaders. In retrospect, this wasn't a Bible college associated with my church. And, like, so up to that point, I had trusted, you know, the church leaders in my church and all this stuff. And then I go to this Bible college where I just kind of, like, took that mentality with me. And then I was a place where they weren't really preaching the gospel. They were preaching the gospel to fit their narrative. I cannot even begin to get into all the, like, it would really have to be an own episode of, like, really go into all the details of all the things that happened and went on there. But there were many instances where they were using the Bible to fit their narrative. And it wasn't, I don't want to say evil, because it wasn't evil. It just was not for the greater good, and it was more confusing to people like myself, who up to that point had been a pretty, like, on fire for God person. But then you're teaching me things that, I guess it was like they took what you would consider like a normal teaching in a church and put it on crack times 20, and the shame and guilt with it was 20 times amplified.
Yeah.
And then it wasn't even all accurate, and that is, like, the worst way to explain it. But, like, it was just, like, it wasn't necessarily that they were doing evil things, even though I can't say anything for sure because it is an actual Bible college and I don't want to make accusations, but there is some stuff that has seemed to come out that shows not so great on them. If you were curious, you can definitely DM me. Like, I'll tell you, but it's just basically it was like they were trying to almost make minions out of us. Like, they were trying to make us to work for the church. They wanted us to be a part of it. It was like their own little cult, and they wanted us to join. The whole goal, what I thought I was going into, was to get, a degree basically in, like, Bible studies. I don't know if that's the right way to phrase it, but just, like, I'm going in to further my understanding of the Bible, my strength in my relationship with God, and then I go home. When you get there, you find out that they're really just trying to use that as a guise to make you into workers for their church, to further their congregation and reach other people, but, like, in sketchy ways. I think that's the best way I can phrase that. And so a lot of shit happened that was really, really hard on me mentally, and it started to break my faith, because I was sitting here as someone who had unwavering faith in God and in leaders in the church, and then I was sitting here and I could feel that something wasn't right, but I didn't know what, and I didn't have enough, like, knowledge to point it out. I couldn't have told you, but it really had increased my previous panic disorder that I'd already, like, started to, like, dissipate a little bit. Like, I leveled out quite a bit, and, like, started getting back into that phase of life where I was having panic attacks multiple times daily and so much anxiety, and it just, like, brought me to this, like, great depression. And so that's why I ultimately ended up leaving before I even fully understood what was even happening there. But I just knew something, like, was going on that didn't sit right with my spirit. And so coming home from coming home from Bible college to, I guess, just kind of having no clue still who I was or what I was doing. And, like, now I had this crack in the foundation that I'd grown up on. It just completely threw me. And the hardest part was I didn't want to stop believing in God. I never wanted to stop believing in God. I wanted to be the girl I was, where I had this, like, blissful ignorance, where I just trusted, had faith, and I was feeling the Lord. Like, I wanted to still be her, but I couldn't even step foot in a church without having a panic attack. And so I was just really in this hard place. And I think I always have had this all or nothing mentality in my, like, built into myself. It's, I guess, like a character trait. I don't really do a lot of the middle ground. Very much I'm all in or I'm out. And it was really hard because I didn't want to be out. And so I kind of almost just, like, put my relationship with God on hold. I literally just said, I'm going to put a pin in that, get back to that later. And so I guess just fast forwarding to where I'm at now, it's something that I've just kind of, like, been dealing with for the last few years, because I guess I came back in 2016. So, oh my gosh, it's actually a lot longer than I realized. It's 2020, almost 2025, but it's something that I put a pin in and I never fully dealt. I think the further you are away from God, not the less you care, but just kind of, like,
Yeah.
I don't know, like the guilt, the shame, like you get further away from it. And so although my faith in God never wavered, my belief in Jesus never wavered, my relationship with God, like my want for the community of church and the desire to get back never changed. The longer I went without it, the easier it was to stay away.
Yeah.
And I don't think like I've been out here like unjustified, like just sinning balls to the wall. But I also think through this process, and I learned more about deconstruction and like what that actually means, because I used to think it meant like basically you're leaving the church, not you're just breaking down like your beliefs and figuring out why you believe what you believe and what you like finding the actual evidence of it in the Bible. And like not just taking what somebody says as bond, because that's something I struggle with now, especially because I feel like although I wish I never had that distance from God in some ways, I've now grown into this person who, when I think about God and how I feel about certain things going on in the world, or maybe perceptions of the church, like that the church has, like of like gay marriage, abortion, even this is kind of random, but I saw like an interview that Candace Owens did with a man, and they were debating the fact that he's gay, and she was just like, well, sodomy is a sin. And I'm like, she's like, sodomy with male, like female, doesn't matter, you can't at all. And I was like, so what qualifies? Like, it started to make me think.
Well, and that's one of those things that like, especially because we were raised in church, that it's so hard to kind of know why we believe what we believe.
Yeah.
And because it's just one of those things that like, I don't know, because.
Yeah. It's like, I knew it without a shadow of a doubt, but I couldn't fully tell you why. And I was trying, like, I'm, like you said, more of the emotional person, like, but I was trying to also, I was doing my Bible study, I was doing my journaling, I was reading, I was trying, I was chasing, but it just, I don't know, after all that happened, and then, distancing myself enough because of my own fears and anxieties and struggles with it, it just brought me to this place of question, because, like, I don't know why sodomy is a sin, and I don't know in what context, and do I just take this one interview I see as proof? Do I go find out for myself? So it just brought me this place of,
well, and then do you go find out for yourself, but how?
Yeah.
Where do you go find out for yourself?
And if you're just reading the Bible, but you can also interpret the Bible, like it wasn't until I was 27, 28 years old that I realized how much of the Bible is truly a parable. And not, like, I knew there was parables in it. I knew that there were stories, like, meant to,
The Bible's not easy to read.
It's not easy to read.
You have to be taught how to read the Bible. And that's one of those things that, like, I was lucky that I had a teacher who did sit down with us and teach us how to actually read the Bible. But so many people aren't taught how to actually read the Bible. And if you come across something in the Bible that you don't understand, what do you do then?
Yeah, and you have to go to trusted leaders. But at that point, even today, my faith in trusted leaders is still a little skewed, like all or nothing, I guess. I went from complete faith in these, certain people in the church to very little. And I think I take into account the personal biases we all have, and like the fact that everybody who has strong beliefs right now about certain aspects of the church and their beliefs and their point of view on stuff like that, they were also raised in the church, and maybe, and who knows if this is just passed down or how many people have gone and looked and researched it themselves. Yeah. I don't know. And there's so many layers to that part of it, but it just brought me to this place of who my God is, because I know he is there. He is there. And I honestly haven't felt him since before I went to college. Like I miss that feeling. I loved feeling like I had God with me and in me. But I know just because I don't feel him doesn't mean he's not there. You don't have to feel him for him to be there. And I know that my God, I don't believe my God is going to hate gay people. I struggle with that.
Yeah.
And I know we can try to pretty it up. I hate the sin, not the sinner, blah, 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 blah. But there's things like that I really, truly want to understand, because how do I find the balance with my personal heart convictions and my faith convictions?
Yeah.
And I won't even say faith convictions for me, because I really don't feel convicted on that personally.
I don't either.
But I also can't stand when we get told that we're not basically real Christians or following the Bible or, following the word because we have different viewpoints on certain aspects.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know. I go in circles in my head about things because I don't fully understand. I don't understand why God would give me such a big heart to empathize with people just for me to call them sinners. And maybe it's my own problem that I don't understand the whole concept of love the sinner, hate the sin. But I feel like when you're putting any kind of wall up with people because of something you disagree with, that's not bringing people to God.
Yeah.
And that's what they're saying the whole point is. And I'm not saying they're wrong, like Christianity's wrong for that. I don't know. So it's not a belief in God issue for me. It's an understanding of what God truly intends for me, or in a general sense, us.
Yeah.
And if I don't believe the way the church has presented the information, does that mean I'm going to hell?
I don't think so.
I don't know. Because what I know about the Bible, or what I was taught at least, was, there's only one way to heaven. Confess by your mouth, accept him in your heart. That's like, but then, okay, like the Catholics, that sounds really bad. But Catholicism, I'm sure you know that they have to repent to get to heaven, or they go to purgatory or something. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't know the actual ins and outs, but So I always had this concept, even as a kid, actually. I always had this idea in my head. It's like, okay, get in a fight with my mom. I'm in the car and I get in a car accident, I die. But if I'm Catholic and I did not repent, am I going to hell or purgatory? Like, where am I going? Like, I'm a full-on saved person. Where am I going? Versus if you're Christian, you're saved by grace. So even if you had just sinned, you're supposed to go to heaven. But like, where's the line on that? Because they say if you're living in sin, then you're also not saved. They're like, if you're truly saved, yes, you're going to sin, but you're going to try to abstain from sinning. But then we see it come out about leaders in the church who have been doing so many different things. They say we don't have to, like the car accident example, like we don't technically have to repent immediately just in order to go to heaven, right? We sin, but we're saved. We get in a car accident. We didn't repent for that sin. We're still supposed to go to heaven. But if you're living in a sinful lifestyle, like me, for example, living with my fiance, having sex before marriage, that is an active choice to sin. And so does that mean I don't go to heaven? And as soon as we get married, is it completely washed away?
I don't know.
Is it completely washed away? Do I have to actually apologize for living in sin? Like, repent for it? Or is it something that's kind of just like canceled out once you do the right thing?
I don't know.
Because if I did it for this long, is it really me repenting? Or is it me just being like, hey, God, hope we're good now. Thanks. Do you understand?
Don't worry, I cleared that up.
Do you get what I'm saying, though? Like, I'll stop. I'm sorry. That was a very long-winded tangent.
No, I agree. And like, I don't know if there's answers to all of that.
But it stops me in my tracks all the time. I hope that we don't have to cut all that out.
No, that was good. That was the whole... I'm not cutting shit out of this.
I mean, I don't know how well that was articulated.
No, that was good. This is a one-take episode.
I hope so.
Not cutting shit out of shit.
Well, we need to at least give it a listen. Make sure, but...
Straight upload.
Fucking send it! Okay, let me say this. I know we're going to wrap this up. I just want to hear kind of your point of view. So, like, on the topic of kind of, like, sinning. Okay. Do you say and think about your sin and feel convicted? I'm using air quotes, but you know what I'm talking about. Like in regards to the church, do you say and think about it? Like, do you feel actual conviction in your heart, or do you just think about it objectively? Like, that this is technically a sin. Do you think about your sin at all? Like at this point in your life?
Sometimes, like if I lie, sometimes I'll feel bad for lying.
Do you feel bad to God or the person you lied to?
Just feel bad in general. Like if I lie, I feel a little guilty. If you're asking me if I feel bad for having premarital sex, no. Or like sometimes I'll accidentally like drive without my wallet, without my driver's license. Like if I'm breaking a rule, I will feel bad.
Are you feeling bad for like in regards to being like accountable to God or the law?
I just feel my stomach hurts.
Okay, so that's your like kind of conviction for you. I guess I ask because I'm sitting here thinking, and sorry to keep talking about the premaritals, but I keep thinking to myself, because I felt so much guilt in the past, I think in order to grow, I had to sort of leave that one behind. And so now I don't feel guilt about it at all. I'm not saying you should, for the record. I just mean that I don't personally feel convicted about premarital sex, but I can understand why someone else would. And I think it's a beautiful thing. And if that's what, like, if you've read the Bible and that is what you believe God wants for your life, I totally understand that. I never read the Bible and said that's what God wants for my life. I was told that's what God wants for my life.
Yeah.
And then, I had all the things associated with it. But I guess my thought or point right now is that I don't feel guilty about it anymore. And so sometimes I wonder, like, do I actually feel guilty about anything? Because I'm not heartless. I do feel bad if I lie to someone. I overthink things. I do care if I hurt someone's feelings. Like, it's not a heartless thing, but I don't associate a lot of things with sin anymore. There's some obvious ones, like premarital sex and stuff, but like, I don't know. I don't associate it with sin in my head anymore. And so I don't really know, like, even if I figure my own trauma out and get back in church, like, is my heart going to magically change? Because I feel like it's a little like ice when it comes to that.
Remember, we were just talking about that. You told me that I need to pray for the Lord to soften my heart.
Doesn't sound like something I'd say.
You told me.
What was the context again? Let me make sure it was something I said.
You did. Because I was sitting in church. And everyone was like being really emotional. And I said, wow, I'm sitting in church with all these people doing church, and they're all making the same noises at the same time. And I feel kind of like we're in a cult. I don't know. But I'm sitting there, and everyone's just like wiping their... You weren't there that day. I was by myself. But like the guy in the aisle next to me had his dog. I took a picture, but I forgot to send it to you. He like had his dog. And everyone was, like, wiping their eyes. And, like, it was a good sermon. He was talking about Joseph being a good stepdad. And I was like, yeah, good on you, Joe. And everyone was wiping their eyes and clapping their hands. And I'm just looking around. And they all stood up at the same exact time. And I'm like, this is so culty. I'm so here for it. And you were like, you need to pray for the Lord to soften your heart.
This doesn't sound like something I'd say.
You were being cheeky.
I know.
And I was like, you know what? I think I actually might. Because, like...
I need my heart softened. I think I've put up a huge wall when it comes to religion. Not the relationship with God, but religion.
Like, I just remember being so, like, moved in church. And...
You mean when you were growing up? Or
yeah. Like, I just remember being so moved. And so, like, I don't know. Like, you could just feel it. And I still, like, love God. I love... the Bible. Like, I love learning about it, but that actual like emotional aspect of it, I feel like I haven't felt in so long.
I completely agree. And I think we know we don't have to feel God to know he's in our hearts, but it feels like he's not there. I think that's what I struggle with too. I think because sometimes, and this is me being real honest with y'all, especially if Alyssa's really doing this in one take, I think sometimes I wonder if my worry of hell is stronger than my belief in God.
Well, that's a good one.
And I've seen arguments online lately talking about like, why would God send people to hell? And I can see both sides of the argument. I've seen, theologists for Christianity describing it, and I've seen people that have deconstructed describing like their point of view, and I can see both sides. I can understand somewhat, but like, is my
you are real scared of hell.
I'm really scared of hell. I'm not really scared of dying. If I had a guaranteed ticket one way up, we'd be solid. Death, don't care who it, like, come on.
I remember when I was a kid, I was also really scared of hell.
Okay, you're equating me to being a child.
That I used to, every single time that, they would do like the altar call of like, if you have every single time, I'm like not joking, like probably up until middle school.
Even if I didn't go to the altar, I'd still do it out loud in my heart. Like, my gosh, yeah.
Every single time, like even if I, like probably up until middle school, every single time I'd be like, Jesus, just in case you didn't believe me last time, I swear I believe in you. I promise everything I have inside my body, I believe in you. You're here. I promise. Please believe me this time. Amen. Yeah. I also always had trouble conceptualizing Jesus on the cross. It's not that I don't believe he died, like, and was born again. I think I'm an emotions person. I'm a feeling person. And I remember being at church like on an Easter Sunday, and we're talking about it, and everybody's weeping, and they're so moved by Jesus' sacrifice. And I felt nothing. Why are you laughing at that? It's so funny.
This was when I was younger, okay, to be fair. I just remember not feeling it. And I was like, why can't I feel Jesus? Like, I believe Jesus died for my sins. Like, why can't I feel the weight of what he did for me? And so I was like, obviously, I'm not a real believer. I'm going to hell. That was the only answer. So I feel like these last two episodes have really given some sad and weird insight into how my brain works. We may actually have to do a deep dive on our traumas with the church. Like, because I don't even feel like I described like you know what I mean? I try to give a general consensus. Yeah. It's so hard.
I don't know. It's so like, it's just such a crazy thing that like, it's insane how it impacts every single area of your life.
It does. Well, I think when you are raised to believe something and you wholeheartedly believe it and you grow up in this and then all of a sudden something happens, whatever that may be, to make you question it, like it's a domino effect. It just infiltrates every like fiber of your being, and it takes you backwards. You're rethinking certain aspects of the past. It's taking you forward. You're in exactly where you're at. It's just everywhere. and it's all the time and it's constant, and the only way to make it go away is to rationalize it. And so you have to either basically pick up your cross and go back in, you know, and try to figure it out, or step away.
Yeah.
And that's what a lot of us do. Sorry if that was like I feel like that was a big old roundabout, like twisted something or another we just spit out.
Listen, we told you at the beginning that this one was gross and vulnerable, so.
And layered. We bounce around a lot in general, but I think this one is hard because we, like I just kind of said, like you go forward and backwards and then come back to the present. Like you're just questioning a lot.
Yeah.
You know what's funny is I didn't even know I had religious trauma for a long time. I didn't know that's what it was. There was a name for it. That's what it was called. You know, I just had anxiety, and I experienced anxiety for so long. I was like, yeah, it's just that.
So I still, and I think I've said this before, is that I don't necessarily know that I have religious trauma.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think that I identify with that word specifically. I think that I was just really hurt by the church. I think that in a time in my life where I needed to be really supported by the church, I was really shut down, and especially by people who should have been, like, you know how you hear a lot, like, oh, I didn't feel supported by my church, and it's people who are just like in the congregation with you, right? But these were people who I thought were my friends, or people who were like my actual, you know, leaders in my youth group, and I just was very rejected by these people, and I felt really belittled by them, and it really just left a really nasty taste in my mouth. And then by the time I was finally ready to start going back to church, it was this concept of I wanted to go back to my church, and like I said, there's 2 campuses, and so I was like, I'm just gonna go back to the big church because most of the negative things that happened at the smaller campus. And I told you one time, I was like, I'm about to walk into this church for the first time in a decade as a single mom of 3 kids. And so there was like that layer of it. And I was like, I don't know how this is going to be received. Like, that's so disgustingly uncomfortable. And like, also I was a menace as a teenager, and I didn't hide it well. Mm-hmm. Like, everybody knew it. And so I don't know.
No, that makes total sense. And it's sad how common that feeling is.
Yeah. And luckily, like I said, I do love my church. Like, and everyone's been amazing. Everyone has just absolutely flocked to the kids, and like, it's been fantastic. But it still is just that like weird thing of finding a place to exist in our church after being gone for so long.
Yeah.
But
I get that. You know, I just thought about too. I didn't mention it because I do this thing when I talk about my past where it's really hard to do it on the spot. And so I just kind of jump around.
Yeah.
But I always remember things after the fact. But I think my dad's my dad not going to church with us growing up, like, I think that impacted the way I chose a husband the first time around.
Yeah.
Because I wanted that so desperately, and I was convinced I needed to have it. And I won't lie, I still want that. Like, and Henry will go to church with us. It's just finding the right church, you know, the balance. But I just really wanted that. And so the way things were presented, you know, at the time when I was young, getting married and dealing with the traumas, I feel like that really...
I don't know, that was one of the reasons why, I mean, like I said, I think our first date was D now.
When you're in that mindset, like, that's so hot. You're like, oh
yes,
my gosh, church.
And like, my dad did go to church with us. I want to say most Sundays. I don't think he was there every Sunday, but like, the church was in our neighborhood, so like, it was easy to drag his ass there.
Yeah.
But he was not involved in the church very much. I think that he would like help out at a trunk or treat, like if we really needed him to, or, you know, something like that. Or like, if we needed help, you know, setting up for a VBS, he would help, you know, hang stuff up on the walls or something. But he wasn't participating in that matter.
My dad, we put on a, I forget what they called it. I mean, I think it was called Fame, and it was basically like we were dressing up as famous dead people who went to hell. And it was like an altar call thing. It was very interesting. I don't know what to tell you. Like, that's literally what it was. I mean, we put on a performance where we were performing lip syncing, and basically at the end of our song, the lights would turn red and we would like die and go to hell.
That reminds me, I never showed you what a Lifehouse skit was.
I think I know what you're talking about, though. We need to watch one. So yeah, similar to that, I think. And basically, I was Janis Joplin, and my dad, being a theater kid, he'd come to a lot of my regular performances. I really wanted him to come to this performance, even though it was like a church altar call thing. He stood in the lobby the whole show, and then walked in the doors for mine and walked right back out.
God, he's my hero.
He refuses to participate, but if you ask him, he believes in God. He wears a cross necklace. Like, that was always interesting to me too growing up. He refused to go to church. He refused to participate. But yeah, so like I think I don't want that for my kid. Like, I want my kid to feel like their dad is going to, or I know I kind of like fucked that all up already, but I know
what you mean.
I wanted my kid to feel like I wanted to be able to have a family in church. That was something that was really important to me, and I think that still hasn't left. I don't know what that looks like now. And I know that Henry's a little more traditional. He was raised Catholic, and like he'll watch Catholic mass from home, like not every week, but like he still was raised Catholic.
Yeah.
And I don't necessarily like think I have Catholic ideals. Like, I don't think being Catholic resonates with me, but if we could find a more traditional Christian, non-dom, Baptist, I don't know, something, I think we can find a middle ground is all I'm trying to say, that adhere to both sides. And that's good for me. Like, I used to think, gosh, this is sound bad. I don't know if you had this thought too. I bet you have. I used to think like my husband's partner's salvation was like my responsibility.
Ooh, that's a tough one.
Shit. So I read this book because I've always been a reader, and I remember getting this book for like my birthday or Christmas one year, and it was basically this Christian story of a husband and wife, and the wife was a church-going, good old Christian woman, and her husband had gone to church with her a little bit, and they backed off, and he had strayed so far from the church, and it was basically like the power of a praying woman to bring her husband back to church, but it was like a fiction story.
God.
And I'm not saying you shouldn't care, or like, I don't know, I'm not saying you can't care or like want to pray for your husband or that, but like I genuinely used to think like it was like my responsibility.
One of the biggest silent battles that Dylan does not even know happened in our marriage was that at one point, before we actually like for real we're like gonna get a divorce, like early on, like I think maybe even
pre-separation.
No, I'm talking like maybe before I was even pregnant with Ella, like
early on. Okay.
I thought that we were doomed because I wasn't sure that he was even saved, and I was like, what's the point of us being together if we're not going to be able to spend eternity together?
And the ironic part is now everybody's saying you don't really care about your spouse in heaven. That's another thing I struggle with. Why are your loved ones greeting you at the gate if you're not married, or your kids aren't your kids in heaven? And they all say like you're not going to care just about praising God, but like I don't understand. Make it make sense. What's the point?
I don't know, but if that's true, can we not tell my kids? Because the only reason that I've gotten them to calm down about this whole when you die you don't have your hands thing anymore is that we all get to meet them at the gates of heaven with all their favorite toys.
Well, I'm not saying that's not true. I just don't understand. Like, I don't understand. Here's what I'm going to end on. I don't understand why we have the good things in life, even the things that the church recommends and calls holy and good and like gifts from God, to just not have them in heaven. And I don't know what it truly means to you acknowledge, that's a loved one, but you don't care. And I understand there's so many things we won't understand unless we go to heaven and get there. And maybe we get to be kind of all knowing, like not literally like God, but we have like a knowingness to us. It's very hard for me to understand why I don't get to have my loved ones with me. Why is my mom not my mom? Why is my son not my son?
I don't know.
What's the point of us being in our best physical forms? Because I'm pretty sure again, I don't have the Bible verses to back this up, but from what I've been taught, people are say we're the best versions of ourselves. We're the healthiest. You may have a grandparent that passed away at a, Do
I get a bubblegum booty dump truck?
That sounds blasphemous. I don't fucking know, dude. I don't know. But
I hope so.
But I just don't get that part. Like, they say like, oh, grandma died from cancer at age 68, and then you meet your grandma and she's in her best form in her 30s. Like they've taught people, they may have like skewed it. I don't know, but it just doesn't add up, and I need to figure this stuff out because it
Do you want to take a Bible? You want to take my Orthodox study Bible home?
I'm not gonna lie, I probably won't read it.
That's all for today, folks.
Look, I have questions and I want to learn, but like I don't know that I'm gonna go home and do it on my own is what I mean. Discussions and a Bible study would probably help me. I want to see it and read it my own. I don't want somebody to tell me, but like I don't know that I could take the adventure alone.
Okay, that's valid.
Thank you.
Anyone want to start a Bible study?
Everybody's welcome. We don't
What
discriminate.
day of the week could we take that on?
Technically Wednesdays.
Yeah. I could probably take that on Wednesday.
And then I do have Preston. We'll figure it out. Did I ever tell you that my youth group was hosted on Fridays instead of Wednesdays?
That's smart.
They did that so kids would have somewhere, good to go on Fridays rather than getting into trouble.
That's smart.
Good old Christianities. So that's where we're at, guys. We hope you enjoyed this deep dive into how fucked our brains are. Join us next week, and we'll probably talk about sex again.
You ain't wrong. Happy 2025.
Kicking this off. This was a banging way to kick off 2025.
Listen, we're starting the year off right. You're not getting no frou-frou shit from us. What did you think this was going to be? New year, new me, manifestation. Affirmations for your best year yet. TTYL, I hope you ate your grapes under the table last night.
Oh,